Around the time when Raid World War II came out, Raul suggested an idea for a show about whether a game is actually challenging or it's just a piece of garbage with waves and waves of enemies. We put it on the back burner a bit until basically everybody realized that yes, Raid World War II was kinda bad. And now that Vermintide 2 has come out, well, it's a good time to visit this issue again and make a proper show about it. Now if you've seen the play now of Vermintide 2, you know I have some issues with the game. I don't think it's as bad as Raid was, but it is problematic. And let's start with the idea of wave shooters in general. Why are they fun? And for that we have to go to one of the best wave shooters ever made, Serious Sam. Serious Sam was fun because not only did they throw a lot of enemies at you, varied enemies, some of them the size of buildings, some of them screaming without heads exploding in your face, but it also let you deal with them in various methods. You had a butt ton of enemies, yes you did, but you also had a butt ton of weapons, different weapons, sci-fi mumbo jumbo even. You had an exploding parrot, you had a cannon, a literal cannon that fired cannonballs that would roll on the ground towards the enemy and just bowl them out of the way. It was fun, it had variety. But that really isn't the kind of wave shooter we're talking about these days. That's not the kind of horde mode, as you will, that we're talking about these days. Instead, it's Left 4 Dead, the game that pretty much everybody in the genre has been ripping off for the past 10 years. Actually, a bit more than that. Why did the Left 4 Dead and its standalone expansion that was somehow sold as a full game instead of an upgrade to the original, but now is an upgrade to the original because it has all the content of the original in it that makes the original invalid, work? Because you always knew what you were getting into. There were no surprises when you were starting out. And by that I mean that you always had the same setup. There was no leveling, you didn't have to grind 50 levels to unlock the ability to not die if you use your abilities too much. Heck, there were no abilities. You didn't have to grind dozens and dozens of missions to get the loot that will make you actually able to enjoy the game. Everything the game had to offer you, everything, absolutely everything was unlocked from the first second. That meant that today you would be able to enjoy it just as much as someone that's been playing it for 10 years. Someone playing for 10 years will not have an advantage over you, will not have epic loot or epic abilities in game that enable them to play harder difficulties, you know, the real game, that were otherwise inaccessible to you. You could from the get-go play realistic mode on maximum difficulty and get your ass kicked, because the only progression that took place in Left 4 Dead was your individual ability to play the game, your skill. It also probably helped that the game had an actual lighting engine, and in areas where there was daylight you could see, and you had the flashlight to see in darkness. It wasn't a piece of crap in that aspect, as some other games are. Games that I have covered this week on this channel, called Vermintide 2. And there again is the aspect I covered in the Vermintide show as well. Left 4 Dead changes as you play it. You will not end a session with the same equipment you started out with, and during the session you will probably switch out your equipment quite often. You'll get different kind of bombs. You'll get bile bombs, the pipe bombs, you'll get molotovs, you'll get different kinds of secondary weapons. You'll have a pistol, 2 pistols, you'll have a desert eagle that just blows everything up, you'll have a sword, you'll have a bat, you'll have different kinds of melee weapons. You can have an axe if you want to, and you have different kinds of main weapons. You have several types of assault rifles. Well, you didn't have in the first one because the first one was more of a tech demo to the second one. Again, Valve pretty much screwed everybody that bought the Left 4 Dead 1, honestly. Majorly screwed them. Like completely up the wazoo screwed them. But hey, they gave Left 4 Dead 2 for free to everybody several times, so it evens out, I guess. But you get different kinds of assault rifles, different kinds of shotguns, different kinds of sniper rifles even, you get Uzis. You get a variety of weapons that change the way you play, change the ways in which you can deal with your enemies. It changes the way in which you can implement certain tactics. You can have people with shotguns at the front, people with sniper rifles at the back, well, just for people, but you know, you have variety there, and you can switch it up. It doesn't get stale, it especially doesn't get stale because the second one had an AI director that also could change the layout of a level, whereas the first one would only deal with the ability of the game to generate enemies, be it your regular zombies or the special ones. You know the special ones, right? The ones that jump on you and kidnap you from a distance and pounce on you and explode. Basically, the enemies that every game of this kind has copied. They're in Vermintide 2. They even have the same attacks. It's honestly baffling that they had not come up with better ideas, with different ideas at least. They just copy-pasted the Left 4 Dead without the bit that actually made the Left 4 Dead work. Left 4 Dead never overstayed its welcome. The amount of time that you spent getting from one safe house to another or to the end of the level never felt like it was too much. It never felt like it just went on for too long. And hey, you failed, okay, you go back to the last safe house and you retry. Do you have that in Vermintide? No, you don't. Vermintide seems to be the kind of game that Fat Shark believed, or at least tried to make, I don't know, the Dark Souls of the genre, in the sense that it's obtuse, overly complicated, boring as hell when you break it right down because of its repetitivity, and fueled basically by a bunch of fanboys that will scream at you constantly if you criticize it in any way. Not saying everybody that plays it is a fanboy, but I've seen the forums, I've seen the comments on other people saying that, maybe this game could use a few touch-ups, and, the comments happen. Left 4 Dead worked and still works because at its core, it is a fun, engaging game to play, with no progression, with no treadmill of levels or loot. It works because people enjoy its gameplay loop, its gameplay mechanics. Even getting killed in that game, or at least almost getting killed, still has an inkling of redemption in it. When you go down, you can still shoot the zombies if you have a pistol. You can still shoot them, you can still contribute to something, you can still try and save your own life. Vermintide doesn't have that. It's specifically made to be worse than Left 4 Dead, even though it copies in it in pretty much every other aspect. And just so you don't think that I'm ragging on Vermintide 2, I also didn't really much like the first Payday. Cops in that game behaved way too much like zombies. Like, with no sense of self-preservation at all. They just came in waves at you, like they were zombies. It was stupid. The second one did come with some improvements, especially in the later versions of it. The initial version had a stupid ass treadmill of upgrades that were just awful. The first version of Payday 2 limited you to, I think it was 2 or 3 zip ties to tie hostages with. And you had to spend points in an upgrade tree to get more zip ties. Holy hell, that's stupid. That's not an upgrade, that's removing a penalty. That's the game basically telling you, oh, you start with a big ass penalty so you can't actually enjoy the game. So you can't actually play it properly until you grind a bunch, bitch. I imagine that's what the game would say, because it's the kind of game that has a stupidity level to its writing that is a bit self-aware, and it's fun that way. And they improved it. They took out that part with the zip ties, and I think now it's a better game. Honestly, haven't played it. Honestly, haven't cared, because it's a game where so let me be clear about this. You, in many situations, have to barricade yourself in places to rob them, and you don't have the ability to close a goddamn door after you pick-lock it carefully so you don't break it. You can't close, not even lock, you can't close the door. That's the kind of stupidity that doesn't make it fun. It's the kind of stupidity that just makes it stupid. Whereas in Left 4 Dead, you could close doors, because it stops the bad guys from actually the good guys technically from going in. And yeah, Payday 2 then did shoot itself in the foot again by implementing those loot thingies with were they paid? I think they were paid drops or something that increased stats for weapons instead of being just cosmetic, because money. Whereas Left 4 Dead didn't have that. It didn't even have cosmetics. It was just fun to play with no progression, no upgrades. But oh yeah, the second one, well, the first one also did have the verse mode. It had a bunch of different ways to play it. You had standard mode, campaign, co-op, single player, had realism mode, you had versus mode, and you had the mutators, which added certain flavors to each playthrough that changed the experience, made it a bit different, made it not be stale. Whereas something like Payday, something like The Raid, something like Vermintide, if you don't level up, if you don't get more gear, if you're not lucky enough to get actually good gear that's at least in a different kind of category than the gear you have, it's gonna be the same. Yeah, they may change up a boss here and there, a location of a boss maybe, but you're going to have the exact same playing experience because you don't actually have the ability to change the way you play your character. You're playing as a fire mage, oh, you're gonna be that mage up until you change the class, or until you find a weapon that actually does something else, which is gonna take you a couple of hours usually, especially if you play with bots, because people can be terrible, or if you can see where you're going and die repeatedly, so you never actually managed to finish a mission. With Left 4 Dead, there was none of that. With Left 4 Dead, you always got an engaging, complete experience every time. Absolutely every time. No grind, no loot, no luck involved. Just you and the people usually screaming at you through the voice chat. It also reinforced a lot the idea of co-op, with people being rewarded at least visually by saying X protected Y or X was healed by Z. It felt more like a cooperative experience than Vermintide 2. It was, for what it tried to do, for the kind of wave-based survival game, it is a much better game. What Vermintide 2 is trying to be is that, plus a progression-based RPG-ish action game. And it doesn't manage to do either of them well, unless, they change the game completely in a week, or at least partially in a week. Which I kind of hope they do, gotta be honest. Blowing up rats with fireballs is fun. If, you could see where you were going while throwing the fireball, or you could have more than one fireball, more than one types of fireball in the same session. But you can't, it's unfathomable currently. So this would be it for my rant about wave-based games, survival-ish kind of in nature, and mostly why Left 4 Dead work, whereas others don't. Where one of them was a good game from the onset and will always be a good game, and others are based mostly on being treadmills. Not even rewarding treadmills, just treadmills. Made by people who saw the idea, the goodness in Left 4 Dead 2, but didn't actually understand it. Imagine if they did. Imagine if they had figured it out, how great this genre of games would have been today. Well, there's always Vermintide 3, I guess. Well then, I'm curious to see what your take on the ideas. Am I being too harsh on Vermintide 2? Or am I just being bitter because I have eyes and want to play it using my eyes? Please leave a comment with your opinion. Goodbye.